Let's, well, I tell you, we're going to talk about the fact the Home Office. There's lots of things the Home Office won't tell us. What a lot of us have been calling for a long time is that we get supplied with the data, the statistics for what foreigners commit what kind of crimes. So we know that 10% of our 80,000 or so prisoners in this country, 10% are foreigners. Many of them asylum seekers, many of them migrants, but they're foreigners. So that's a disproportionate amount. So what we would like to know is what crimes are they committing? What sort of crimes are they committing? Because often a pattern will emerge, but the Home Office won't give us that. Probably because we'd find out that there was sex crimes, drug crimes, that kind of thing. Now, Russell, they won't publish the data for the number of people they have deported who were members of grooming gangs. I would suggest that's because they've probably deported hardly anyone.
Well, if anyone at all. And of course, that's assuming that the grooming gangs, although they are said and are demographically, statistically to be predominantly Pakistani men, that could be that they're second generation as such. They could have been born here to Pakistani families. So obviously they can't be deported on that basis. But I think what this now makes us focus on, which again we've been talking about on Talk for the last few weeks, is what the propensity is of those that come to this country to commit crime over and above the natural population. Now, we've seen what's happened. I mean, you were away, but you presumably would have caught what happened recently in Sweden. Sweden has spent the last 10 or 11 years with doors wide open, all refugees welcome, and as a consequence, their crime rate has gone absolutely through the roof. Arson, assaults, sexual offences, bombings, and so on. So they've now closed the doors because they've realised that their Merkel-type policy was not the right thing to do. They, as a consequence, realise that those that go to their country, particularly those illegal immigrants, those so-called asylum seekers, have a higher propensity to commit crime. Denmark has discovered the same thing because they do actually look at the statistics with regard to who commits crime. In Paris, it's said that some 70% of people recently that have been convicted of rape were not born in France. So there is a pattern emerging here, but of course that the establishment, the elites, don't want to talk about on any level, not just when it's rape gangs, but crime from immigrants generally.
Well, while the government is determined to keep us in the dark about these awkward statistics, the fact that they don't deport grooming gang members, the fact that people go to prison for sex and drug offences, violent offences, we don't even deport them after that. So the Home Office and the government don't like talking about this because they've made a real pig's ear of it and it's embarrassing for them. So they won't give us the statistics, but our thanks to the Centre for Migration Control, which has come up with its own analysis, its own statistics, and it has revealed that foreign nationals, drum roll, are 3 times more likely to be arrested for sexual offences as British citizens. So what we've got here is a pattern that migrants, asylum seekers, foreigners are 3 times more likely to commit sexual offences than British citizens. That's special, isn't it?
Well, and there's also a pecking order, of course. I think Albania is top of the hit parade when it comes to their propensity to commit crime generally. But also quickly, if I may, just going back to this grooming gang statistic, reported in the Telegraph today, a convicted Rochdale grooming gang ringleader was still living in the city where he abused children 9 years after his deportation was ordered. Kwari Abdul Rauf was one of 9 Asian men convicted of sex offences against vulnerable girls in 2012. He was sentenced to 6 years in jail. Guess how long he did? 2 years, and is still here despite there being a deportation order hanging over his hideous head.
Yeah, we had at least 2 cases towards the end of last year of paedophiles who went to jail for paedophile offences, who were then allowed to stay by the European Court of Human Rights, but because they had a right to a family life, because they had a couple of kids, a wife and a couple of kids. Paedophiles, go to jail, 2 years, come out, you can stay, because you've got a right to a family life. I say, yeah, by all means have you got a right to a family life in your own country, in another country, not in Britain. This is ridiculous. There are, I think, 16.1% of the... there are 9% of our population, of the whole of Britain, are foreign nationals. They account for 16 8.1% of the total number of arrests. So we're letting all these foreigners in. I'm not making any comment about that. Just it's a fact. You know, we let more than 1 million in legally. We let sort of 50, 60,000 in illegally across the channel. I'm not making any comment about that. I'm just saying all these foreigners we're letting in, they are committing a disproportionate amount of crimes. 9% of foreigners commit 16% of our crimes. And they're 3.5 times, foreigners, 3.5 times more likely to commit sexual offences.
I was going to say that's particularly true when it's sexual offences.
We should be looking at these statistics. We should be taking this seriously.
I mean, you know, you've got the likes of Rupert Lowe and others that obviously have campaigned to have these numbers released. The government, of course, have been hesitant. How on earth can we tackle a problem if we won't allow ourselves, or the government won't allow us, to look at whether there is a problem? Now, we know clearly that there is. How do we tackle it one way or the other? I mean, and let's again, Kev, should we just tell it how it is? There are certain cultures that treat women differently in their cultures to the way that we treat them as a, let's call it an indigenous British population. That might sound right-wing, far-right, whatever you want to call it, I don't care, but it is simply true. Different cultures treat women in different ways. So if you are just plonked here in the middle of Aylesbury, having got off a dinghy yesterday, is it any wonder that because we haven't looked at this from a statistics point of view, therefore we haven't tackled the problems, is it any wonder that we've got certain types of demographic wandering around our town centres, treating women in an abhorrent way, because that might be acceptable in the countries from which they come?
Indeed. Now, we should go to break now. When we come back, we'll have a brief chat about Justin Trudeau, you know, the bank account closer, that fascist from Canada whose wokery is finally done for him. He's resigned today. Everybody in Canada hates him. And the real reason he's had to go is because a stupid left-wing woke idiot that he is. He was going to go to war with Donald Trump over the tariffs. And the finance minister there, his deputy, said, no, this is insane. She resigned, leaving Trudeau high and dry, and basically Canada's had enough of this ludicrous left-wing wokery, and they chucked him out, so he's had to quit. So happy days for Canadians, not so happy for us because we're still stuck with two-tier free gear. Great, isn't it? We'll talk a little bit about that next, but also the fact you're like this, Russell, if you go to hospital, I don't know, for A&E or you need treatment, you know, if you go to A&E, British citizens wait an average of 12 to 15 hours. Isn't that special?
Disgraceful.
Migrants, 15 minutes.
Yep.
Special priority system for asylum seekers. That, folks, is true. That is true. So stay tuned for the appalling details.